Guys, we live in a fast-changing world which is full of asynchronous events. Think about an order you place in your favorite online shop, which would result in an order-created event where some other business unit might want to react to. Think about a payment being processed. Since COVID, we have a lot of online payments, digital payments around. And think about the app is showing the notification how much amount you spent with your credit card in the second when you swipe the credit card. Or think about something which happened to me on Wednesday when I wanted to arrive here. They switched flights they switched the plane in the last second, and while scanning my boarding pass, I got a new seat in the plane in real time. This is all something which is related to asynchronous events and which will define the future, how companies, how enterprises will be able to succeed, to react on these events, to think event native, and to be able to directly do something if this comes up. But why is it that we still treat these asynchronous challenges either with synchronous technology or completely different as our well-known and good-known API management approach with, for example, REST APIs? In my talk today, we will discuss why REST isn't enough to be able to react on asynchronous events which are everywhere around in our daily life, how Event API products can help to govern and to organize these asynchronous events. And we will discuss the idea of a unified API management approach, which will combine REST APIs with asynchronous APIs in one single pane of glass. My name is Benjamin Gottstein. I'm working at Solace. In my role, I'm helping companies to build event-driven architecture based on the PubSub platform from Solace. To myself, I'm located in Munich. You might saw it on the t-shirt. So this is the Frauenkirche in Munich. And Solace is actually a Canadian company. We are since 20 years in the event streaming and messaging area. We started from a financial services area, so we started with banks and with a lot of trading use cases with really real time, a lot of messages per second. So our biggest customer has 100 billion messages a day in their platform. And from there, we evolved step by step to a software company and now to a software as a service company, which is offering an end-to-end event-driven architecture platform to fulfill event-driven architecture use cases. Enough about me, enough about my employer. Let's talk about why REST isn't enough. I want to start with a slide from Gartner, which is from the latest symposium this year. And this was really the keynote talk of Gartner. And they were talking about, in this fast-changing world, which we all saw during COVID, right? I think there is a joke, who did most for the digitalization in your company? CIO, CTO, COVID, right? It was COVID, actually. So COVID changed everything. But besides COVID, the world is changing. And what Gartner says is, the faster things change, the faster you must think as a company. The faster you must think, the more you need real-time context. And the more you need real-time context, you must think event native. And what is this event native mindset? I think we all know the slide on the left-hand side. The state of everything is in the middle of into our IT. And what we see right now is that it's changing towards the event is the center of the IT. And an event change will trigger changes in many applications around the whole application environment and business. And Gartner says this is important to be able to not just react on change, but be ahead of a change, right, and be successful in the future. And why is that? It's because really in our daily life, we don't think about it, but our daily life is completely asynchronous. Just think about a connected car use case where you open the car via an app. This is a perfect use case where you, in a millisecond, want to have this car opened so that the door is opened and that you directly get a response as a user, but it needs to scale heavily because you have millions of cars which are connected. And all of these things you trigger via your app. Opening the car, closing the car is an event. Another one which became really big due to COVID is real-time trading and also real-time payments. So think about all the neobanks out there. What they do is they operate on millions of events every day, because every trade you put into the app is an event. And this event needs to be processed in a very, very fast time to secure that it's still based on the amount you thought it is, right? So that you get the price you want for this trade, for example, so that it's processed fast and it's scalable. The next one, I'm from retail. So before joining Solace, I was actually working for a Solace customer, which is the Schwarz Group, Lidl and Kaufland. And Lidl most of the retailers were pretty batch-driven back in the days. And now every retailer is starting to think about how can we build a real-time inventory? How can we be able to build new customer satisfaction solutions, for example, that you have your receipt digitally on your app, so that you don't just have the printout, but you still have it digitally in the app, and you have the same experience as you would have in an online shop, for example, but you have it on site in the store. Also an industrial maintenance use case. So think about predictive maintenance, for example. You want to repair a motor before it's failing. And to do that, you need to react on certain events, which this motor might send, the sensor, for example. So when it's heated up, you might want to look at it before it's really crashing. And we have a big customer in Solace doing exactly that with escalators and elevators. Next one is supply chain. I think also in COVID, we saw it pretty heavily. The supply chain is a very, very fragile thing. So we need to be careful with our supply chain. And the supply chain is full of events. The order, then you have the different parts of your supply chain. You have ships maybe going around, you have airplanes, etc. And you, as a company, want to ensure that you keep track and know what's going on. Where is my product, which I ordered, to be able to react on that in probably real time or just in time, and to produce new stuff based on that. And with an event-driven approach, you can react on all these events in the whole supply chain. And the last one is aviation. So also aviation is full of event-driven use cases. I gave you one from Wednesday when I boarded the plane, but also all the tickets you buy, every ticket you buy is an event which will be processed in the background in different systems which do something with this event. So all these events are around, and all these events are asynchronously. So why is REST not enough to deal with those events? And I had no idea, so I had to ask ChatGPT, right? And what's funny is that when it was finally up again, today in the morning, ChatGPT agrees with us. REST isn't enough for asynchronous events. Because REST is really, really good and is absolutely great for request reply patterns, for external facing applications, right? So for example, an app would maybe call directly in REST API, or you as a company would offer a REST API to your vendors or your business partners, because it's easy to use, everybody knows how to use a REST API. So therefore it's really great. But for asynchronous use cases, REST comes really to its limit due to scalability, due to decoupling, and due to the huge overhead you have with the HTTP protocol, especially for small events which are latency sensitive, etc. So what ChatGPT says is, REST APIs may not be sufficient for handling asynchronous events due to the dependency you gain, but still I think there's even more to talk about why we should think about something in addition to REST APIs to deal these asynchronous events. And that's what we do today. And one thing ChatGPT does not talk about is how we get these events in motion and how we are able to react on changes everywhere we would like to change. So the idea is you push an event, and as we talked about, it could be everything, right? It could be an order, it could be an inventory change. And what you want to do is you don't want to pull it synchronously. Did something change? You want to react on it once it happened, right? Once the event came into the system, you want to react on it. And as we see in heterogeneous environments, we have systems everywhere, on-premise, even in factories, even in stores, or in multiple clouds. So the idea is to get these events in motion and be able to react on them as they occur everywhere we would like. And we at Solace call this an event mesh. It's actually a solution we offer to be able to react on events, to publish events, receive events on-premise, and also hybrid and multi-cloud. As you can see it here, so in this case, it's a mesh between an AWS cluster, Google cluster, and also Tanzu cluster. And yeah, so the events are floating around and we don't have this point-to-point communication, synchronous communication, which would result, especially if you have more a use case where you would talk about choreography, so not an orchestration use case where you really want to reuse events and have a choreography use case. In this case, you would be able to reuse the events which are already in the system and decouple the systems from each other. So they can independently react on these, do something with them, and then reply back if necessary. So now we talked about why REST isn't enough, but what is an event-driven API actually? And don't be worried by this text. I will just quickly say it. An event-driven API is pretty similar to a REST API in terms of the management. So we would also have the event-driven API in a catalog. We would also have request workflows within an API portal, for example. So we would treat the event APIs similar to REST APIs. We would also have a specification for them. I think before my talk, it was the async API talk. So async API might be one of them. And the idea is really to treat events as we already treat, all of you as the API expert of your company, RESTful APIs. So, and I already said it, the idea is not to do everything with event-driven APIs. That's very important. The idea is to use REST where it's useful and where it's good to be used, and to use event-driven APIs where they are, gaining value for your enterprise and for your architecture. So I brought one use case. It's an order management use case. So just think about your favorite online retailer. You go in the app, you place an order, you want direct feedback that the order has been received by the retailer, right? Let's assume you have some other service in the background doing something on that order, which will delay this notification. You may think, oh, did it appear at the online shop? Should I order again? So maybe you ordered twice the product, you just wanted to have one because you didn't get a feedback that the order was already processed or was received by the retailer. So there you want a direct response. You would have a REST API, for example, saying, yes, dear customer, we have your order. We will notify you if something changes or when something changes. And all the next steps behind would include inventory services or, for example, shipping services, CRM services, so different business parts of your enterprise which want to react on this order. And all those would now react asynchronously on exactly this event, right? And the idea here is they do not have 3 individual events. There's one event in the system, in the event mesh, and the 3 business units would all use the same event, reuse this event, and do whatever they need to do with this completely asynchronously decoupled from the actual sender. So your customer has no idea how long maybe the inventory service takes for doing stuff in the inventory, or the CRM system, but the customer will get notified once, for example, the package has been packed and is ready to be shipped. Then the customer might get notified once the package left the actual distribution center, etc. And all these notifications would be, again, asynchronously replied to the customer in its app, for example, as an asynchronous notification. So far so good. I think I saw some nods in the room, so yeah, makes sense. So why we are here. We believe that this is not enough. So where event-driven APIs come in place is to not just use these events within this business process, but to also expose events to other stakeholders, either internally or even externally, to also reuse them. So and this is where we think the most value will be generated out of an event-driven architecture, so that you're also able to use already existing events. I have the retail context, so I can just tell about receipts. If you buy something on your favorite retail store, you will get a receipt, and this receipt is a digital event. Back in my former employer, more than 10 applications reuse the same event in different runtimes. Some in the cloud, some on-premise, wherever. But the store only had to push it once, and then it was efficiently reused wherever they needed to reuse this event. So far, so good. In theory, sounds great. Of course, there are a lot of challenges. How do we ensure that we have everything from the content perspective in the event, all these consumers need, etc.? So the big question is, how do we manage these events? And we believe a good idea is to manage the events as event API products. You all know, I think, asynchronous event API products, and an event API product is pretty the same. So you would bundle related APIs, you would put them into a developer portal, and they would be managed by a product owner or an API team. So how this comes in place in an event-driven API use case would be, for example, something like this. You have a couple of events which are related to the order status. You have a couple of events which are related to the inventory. And in this case, you also have a couple of events which are related to the pricing. And what you do is you would cluster those events, bundle them as API products, and be able to describe them within async API and allow also other stakeholders in your company to consume this event API. So for example, if you have a new project coming in, and what they need is they just want to know every order which has been processed, to have some statistics, whatever, they would just plug their new application into the event mesh and get all these events without a change necessary for either the publisher or the existing consumers. So far, so good. But now it comes to the tooling. So how do we really do this in the real world, right? For now, a lot of this was kind of a theory. So we already have great tools in place for synchronous stuff. We have an API portal, we have an API gateway, with something like OpenAPI to specify the API, and we have functionalities like the catalog and discovery capabilities, etc. On the async world, for now, we just had an event broker. Yeah, most of you know some kind of event broker, I guess, some open sourced or some non-open sourced. In our case, it would be the Solace event broker, for example. But how to manage this? Where is the portal? Where are all these capabilities? And this is where the Solace event portal comes in place. So the Solace event portal is more or less the same as an API portal for synchronous APIs, but in this case, really for asynchronous event API use cases, and it's based on asynchronous API. And the idea is really to combine these two together. Why do we need an event portal? The idea is not just to have a UI to design stuff and to be able maybe to import asynchronous APIs. The idea is also to have discovery agents which would allow you to discover all the events which are in your existing messaging clusters, like in Solace or maybe like in different Kafka versions or Kafka flavors. So to discover these events, get them into the event portal, design them, and build an event API product over the whole lifecycle. Discovery, assess them, bundle them, release them, and then finally manage them. This is all you can do with the event portal. But do we want to have another tool in place? Do we want to tell our people, hey, dear developer, if you want to use an API, for REST you go this way, for async you go this way? We just talked about combining the two of them might be a good idea. So I think it's not a good idea to have another tool just for this use case. So let's talk about unified API management, which has the idea to combine synchronous and asynchronous APIs even in one API product. So I think we all now understood that all REST, especially in a choreography use case, might be a challenge. That's where hybrid REST event APIs came in place, which used asynchronous events in the backend. But still, this is not the high value we want to generate. We want to expose also these asynchronous events as asynchronous event APIs. But how to do that? And I brought you today a blueprint we implemented at a couple of customers. So this is real stuff. This is not theory. The idea is most of our customers, they already have an API management tool in place for their REST APIs, Xway, Apigee, MuleSoft, Gravity, you name it, right? And the idea is to use all of these capabilities which are already in place for API management, but to use them also for event APIs. And here comes the event portal in place. So what we do with a couple of customers is we integrate the event portal, which is great for managing all the events and to manage asynchronous APIs together with your architects, your developers, and your DevOps teams. And to integrate these API products into the existing API management solution to have one unified workflow so that you as a developer or as an architect, you have one single pane of glass, which would be your unified API management to connect to. And what we do is we try to connect to all of the API management solutions out there. So we did it now at Bosch with Xway, for example. So Bosch is using exactly this setup to build a unified API management approach. But we also do it with other systems, and we do it natively with Gravity. So how would that look like from a workflow perspective? As a developer, I have the same workflow as for an synchronous API. So I can go in the API portal, subscribe to an API which is there, request the access, and then everything else will be provisioned on the broker. So as with the REST API on the API gateway, all the necessary assets would be published to the event broker. So the developers are able to consume this asynchronous API in the same style as you consume a synchronous API, which is, from my perspective, very important to make it easy to handle in the daily basis, in our daily life. We should treat the things the same. Why do we do that? I believe it will increase innovation in your company because you have a higher transparency of your events. You can reuse these events and you can use fitting technologies for your needs. So you don't have to use synchronous technology for asynchronous challenges. I also believe you get a higher return of investment for everything you do there because data is value in companies. So reusing data in an efficient way will save money. And just think about the cloud egress you'd need to pay. With an event-driven way, you just give the event one time into the cloud, and there you can multiply it thousands of times, you can reuse it thousands of times, but you just give this data one time into the cloud, and then it's there and it's reusable. And the last one, I believe, is increased customer satisfaction. I always get really satisfied when I see my Uber coming to me, and I can directly see where it is right now. This is an asynchronous use case, actually. So you can build new implementations to build new customer satisfaction solutions. I started the talk with, we live in an asynchronous world. I hope for you guys it was understandable and possible why we think it makes sense to bring the two worlds together, the synchronous and the asynchronous, and use the best technology which is fitting for the challenge ahead. If you want to find out more about asynchronous API, about the event portal, about unified API management, how we do that, we are here at the booth, just one floor ahead, S207, just come by. We have also Hari, our developer advocate, which gave a workshop on Wednesday at the booth. So just drop by. We'll be really happy to discuss event APIs with you because, and this is my last sentence, what I really liked about this API days is we had nice talks with a couple of people. I see a couple of faces from yesterday, and they were not saying like, yeah, we're thinking about that. They were really saying, yeah, this is something we want to do, right? Or we already started to do that, to combine synchronous with asynchronous APIs. And I'm glad to see that it's really happening. So it's not a theory, it's really something a lot of enterprises are doing. Thanks for your time, and I would really like to see the one or the other at a booth to discuss a little bit more in detail. And I wish you a good rest of the day and a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. It was nice to see a unified approach. Before break, we have time for some questions. So who wants to argue less is enough?
Oh, you can argue with me. It's all good. I like to see different opinions, right? So maybe one thing in addition, if we have a little time. So what we see at a lot of companies is if you have an orchestration use case where it really makes sense to orchestrate services, REST APIs are widely used and are a good way to trigger this orchestrator. But if you are talking about choreography, so you want to share the events between different domains, for example, or different microservices, this is where event-driven and asynchronous APIs really come to life. And this is where we see a lot of benefits. Of course, there are also challenges, right? So nothing is for free. Distributed environments bring challenges, but we tried with the event portal to solve one of these, which is the transparency. And also we now have distributed tracing in place, so you're now able to see every hop which the event takes in your landscape from the publisher to the subscriber to understand where's my event, right? What happened with the event if it, for whatever reason, did not arrive at a subscriber.
That's pretty cool. Thank you very much, Benjamin, once again.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.